Could a plasma demon once inhabited the Great Pyramid? It's a wild question, I know, but it is one worth exploring. We have been talking about plasma and non-human intelligence, angels and demons, and the magic that interweaves them all. But I have something even more fascinating for you today, because when you start looking at plasma and ancient structures, things get weird. Now, let's talk about a concept that's been floating around for a while but hasn't been fully appreciated. It's something that Joseph Patrick Farrell brought up, I don't know, about 3 years ago. And I recently watched this interview because Martin Taylor made me. Thank you, Martin. I actually thought I'd seen all the talks, but I was wrong. And this was a good one. I'll pop it below, but Farrell ties together Zecharia Sitchin, the Sumerians, and hidden physics, specifically related to the Great Pyramid. So much more interesting than Mr. Beast's Egypt Swarm commercial or whatever the fuck that was. Don't get me started on that, right? Please. But anyway, I agree with Joseph that while Sitchin's grand narrative has always been debatable, he has details that are very, very interesting, and often details hold the key. One detail that stood out to Joseph and also caught my eye was, to quote Joseph, an Akkadian book of Job entitled Ludlow Bel Nemeke, I praise the Lord of Darkness, refers to, quote, the irresistible demon that has exited from Ekur, unquote, in a land, quote, across the horizon in the lower world, bracket, Africa, close bracket, end quote. Okay, that's a mouthful. Now, I'm probably mispronouncing the word Ekur, so forgive me for that. But it translates to sacred mountain. In symbolic language, this could refer to a ziggurat, a pyramid, a temple, or even the entire earth. In Sumerian and Akkadian traditions, Ekur was more than just a structure. It was a cosmic access, a bridge between the heavens, the earth, and the underworld. And while it was famously associated with the Temple of Enlil in Nippur, again, hopefully I'm pronouncing it properly, its meaning extended far beyond a single physical site. It represented the sacred threshold between worlds, a place where divine forces could manifest and where power could be contained or unleashed. And this brings us to the irresistible demon said to have emerged from the Ekur. Now, was this truly a demonic entity, or could it have been something else, something that ancient observers lacking modern terminology struggled to describe? Now, some researchers suggest that ziggurats and pyramids may have been designed to harness or interact with atmospheric and geomagnetic energy. If so, the demon in these texts may not be a literal supernatural being, but rather a plasma discharge event, a powerful burst of energy perceived as a divine force. Now, many ancient civilizations witnessed auroras and ball lightning and high energy discharges, and without, science or a scientific framework, the way that we have it anyway, they may have interpreted this as the wrath of gods or the manifestation of supernatural entities, which we kind of make fun of, but we shouldn't. But anyway, if pyramids or ziggurats played a role in ionizing the atmosphere, they could have triggered or concentrated electromagnetic forces. A sudden plasma eruption, whether from a corona discharge or a geomagnetic storm or an artificially induced effect, could have easily been described as a spirit or entity or demon emerging from a sacred structure. And here's where it gets interesting. The texts don't just describe a demon appearing, they describe it as escaping from the Ekur and moving beyond the horizon. Now, this suggests that Mesopotamian law linked the force to a land beyond their known world. Possibly Africa, a distant and mysterious place for their cosmology. But if we consider plasma a form of intelligence, this idea takes on an entirely new dimension. Could it be that the Sumerians were recording an event in which a plasma entity, once housed within the Great Pyramid, was released? Was the Akir not just a symbolic gateway, but a functional one, a place where energies could be stored, focused, or even contained until, I don't know, maybe something went wrong? If so, what was the nature of this plasma intelligence, and what did the ancients truly witness when they recorded the escape of a force from the sacred mountain? Let's think about what we already know, okay? Plasma is self-organizing, capable of storing information, and is sometimes even described as behaving intelligently. Could the Great Pyramid have once been housing or even containing some kind of non-human intelligence made of plasma? There's evidence to suggest something explosive happened in the Great Pyramid. Some researchers believe that there was an explosion that made the chambers wonky, right? Possibly indicating a plasma discharge. So what if what the ancients called a demon was actually a plasma intelligence that at some point broke free? And then there's the placement of the Great Pyramid, right? It perfectly aligned with the Earth's cardinal directions, and it sits near the geographic center of the world's land masses. So if this was a structure built for something more than just tombs, what was it really for? Farrell and other researchers propose that the pyramid was an energy generator or a resonance chamber, not just a monument, but an active structure that interacted with forces beyond materialist physics. Farrell talks about it as a weapon even that was fought over in a cosmic war. See, I told you much better than Mr. Beast, my God. Anyway, and this brings up Tesla. Farrell believes that the kind of tech we're talking about here, we're just learning about now in the mainstream. Tesla tech is probably what the ancients were masters of. So here's my question. Was the Great Pyramid once a seat of power for non-human intelligence? Was it built as a containment device or a power station, a communication hub for plasma entities, or even a weapon? Think about it. Imagine standing before the Great Pyramid, its limestone casings once gleaming white under the Egyptian sun, reflecting light so intensely that it could be seen from miles away. It wasn't just a monument. It was a statement, a commanding presence, etched into the fabric of the earth. Its very location and construction made it the ultimate seat of power, not just politically, but energetically, geographically, even cosmically. Unlike places which could be burned or statues which could be toppled, the pyramid was eternal, unchanging, immovable, and towering over all structures. This was more than architecture. It was a psychological weapon, if nothing else, imprinting obedience, awe, and even submission onto the minds of those who lived beneath its shadow. And so, does it make sense? Back to our quote, that there was a plasma demon that was escaped the Akir? Dun, dun, dun. If so, where did it go? I don't know. If you want to dive deeper, I'll link Joseph Patrick's and Dark Journalist's interview below. Watch it because the implications are mind-blowing. He makes an incredible point, though, about our physics. He says something like, we have to move beyond our Victorian materialist physics, and that's true. Our physics is not complete yet. We are only playing with such a small percentage of the universe, or as Cliff High calls it, the grit. Tesla himself once said, the day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of existence. I believe this to be true. And this is precisely why we're looking at science and the science of the ancients in magical Egypt. And our science has been locked in this materialistic dogma, dismissing plasma physics and consciousness and non-human intelligence. But the reality is 99% of the universe is plasma. And if intelligence can exist in forms beyond what we recognize as biology, then we need to radically shift our understanding of physics. If Tesla was right, we're on the verge of a massive paradigm shift. Don't get left behind, lovelies. More soon.
One template to rule them all. One of the many puzzling questions this research has brought up has to do with certain spatial relationships that parallel the geometry of the human form. Often, these spatial analogues will be in the architecture itself and impossible to actually see. We have seen these organic proportions, these vital spatial relationships, both in single structures and in the layout of entire temple complexes. It begs the question, is there a functional reason why these measurements and proportions are so essential to the layout and operation of the temple? And why would they be seen again and again across cultures and across time? There is something about the ancient technology of the temple that requires the same harmonic relationships as the human body. Are we looking at an ancient, lost or forgotten branch, or modality, of science, based on principles and knowledge that have been lost to time, or simply rejected by the modern West? Could this be related to modern scientific advancements in electromagnetics, resonance and field theory, and their mysterious interaction with human consciousness? In the case of more modern architecture, it might be easier to dismiss as a modern architect paying an homage to a design from the ancient world. But like an anecdote involving the cargo cult, its outer form is copied, but its hidden function and intellectual underpinning are absent. But in cases like the Hebrew movable tabernacles, there really were no architectural details except for these key proportions and relationships, and the same direct correspondence to the spatial relationships and intervals of the vital centers of the human body. In Egypt, Sumeria, Babylonian, Akkadian, and Vedic cultures, in ancient Buddhist and South American cultures, these same secret templates invisibly govern the layout of the physical temples. A common, hidden message expressed across each of the major cultures of the ancient world, and recurring as echoes in later sacred art and architecture. This is another example of an anomalously sophisticated scientific and technical acumen that appears to be fully developed at the very beginning of recorded history. What are these mysterious invisible templates drawing our attention to? Could we be looking at the tattered evidence of an ancient science, whose purposes and foundational understandings are opaque to us in the modern world? And is there something deeper that these temples all carry? How can it be that one template is the invisible and silent governor of temples and sacred art from around the world and throughout time? This is no conspiracy theory. It's not about aliens or unprovable speculation. It's about artists discovering a visual language embedded in the art and architecture of the ancient world. A visual language that transmits an ancient message. A scientific time capsule for the ages, immortalizing an anomalously sophisticated corpus of knowledge about the very thing that continues to elude modern Western scientists: the hard problem of consciousness. Could this be a new Peary-Rice map? Could we be looking at ancient schematics which diagram and explain the aspects of the brain involved in our experience of consciousness? Could this finally be irrefutable evidence that the ancients understood and mapped the inner landscape, the inner universe of consciousness, as meticulously as they did the outer world? And what would the revelation of such a science mean to us in the modern day? In Magical Egypt Season 4, we demonstrate how these hidden artistic visual languages, which have been hiding in plain sight for all of recorded human history, are not found just in the ruins of ancient Egypt, but in the earliest Taoist and Hindu traditions as well, unifying art and science to create something that looks for all the world like the long-lost owner's manual for the human conscious experience. What does it all mean? To watch the entire documentary cataloguing these remarkable new discoveries, visit us at www.magicalegypt.com.